My name is Katie Krause. I'm an extension educator with the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I'm excited to share my session today, Strengthening Practice Through Virtual Nature-Based Learning, Professional Development, and the Community of Learners. Just to share a little bit about me, like I said, my name is Katie Krause. I am a faculty member at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I serve with Extension. We'll talk about Nebraska here in just a minute. I'm really excited to hopefully see some of you or have seen some of you at the 2026 Natural Start Alliance Conference in person in San Antonio, where I'm also doing another presentation. I was so excited to get to present online last year and then participate in the conference when it was in Portland in 2024. That's the photo of me at one of the offsite events in 2024 with my little one that came to the conference with me. And then my silly family on the right-hand side just this last Christmas all together. I usually use a lot of photos and videos in my online classes of both my own children exploring in nature as well as children in the programs I work with and different ideas and pictures from different sites. But this class is more about talking about our PD. So you'll see a few photos kind of scattered throughout just to kind of keep it not quite so text heavy. But just wanted to introduce myself and my children to you. So with my role with Nebraska Extension, I am so fortunate that kind of the general rule or general role that I have is to improve the lives of children and families in my community in a way that is identified by the community need and then also combines my own interests and skills around the area of early childhood. So I'm really fortunate that I've been able to focus majority of my work on supporting early child programs to integrate nature-based learning into their programs through curriculum and creation of play-based learning opportunities, as well as through the creation of more naturalized outdoor learning environments. So we'll get into just kind of digging into deeply about what this last year's professional development around this looked like for us. We'll talk about kind of some lessons learned from that, and then share with you what kind of our next steps are. So a lot of our work is really kind of grounded in our work as an inside-outside chapter. We presented last year on the nature-based early childhood program assessment and guidebook that we had utilized as our kind of our framework for our meetings last year. And then most of the topic today is actually a course that was designed to support our inside-outside meetings in the 2025-2026 academic year. If you're not familiar with Inside Outside, it is a wonderful organization. The mission is to support, connect, and partner with educators to help bring their classrooms outside. It was started out on the East Coast in the fall of 2018 with Liza Boyd over at Antioch, and our Nebraska chapter, our Nebraska-Iowa chapter, launched in the fall of 2022. Just to give you a little bit of an overview about our chapter here in Nebraska, we were formed, like I said, in the fall of 2022. We initially were really created to be an in-person group meeting primarily in the Omaha, Nebraska community. Omaha is, if you're not familiar with Nebraska, which as a non-Nebraska native myself, I didn't know much about the geography of Nebraska prior to moving here, but Omaha is way over on the east side of Nebraska, right on the Missouri River. And many parts of Council Bluffs, Iowa are much closer to us than lots of Nebraska. And actually, we can get across Iowa in a lot less time than it takes us to get across Nebraska as well. So it made sense because of the Council Bluffs kind of area. And we do have quite a few people from Iowa that join our professional development classes, that our chapter is an Iowa-Nebraska chapter. We originally were started to be primarily in the Omaha area, the Omaha Metro, and doing things in person. In-person things post-COVID have been kind of tricky. We all really crave that time together in person, but it's really hard to hash that time out. So our chapter went through a couple of years of trying to figure out what exactly the need was in the community. And to give you just a little bit of background, particularly the Omaha area, but really across the state of Nebraska, there's not a lot of solely nature-based programs. There are a handful. We don't have any type of licensing right now for nature-only programs, nature-based only or forest school type programs. We don't have a lot of forests in Nebraska either, so we consider them more, a nature-based program than a forest school, like our friends on the East and West Coast might utilize. And we find that most of our nature-based educators or people that are really passionate about nature are embedded within the existing systems, whether that be licensed childcare centers, public schools, and we do have quite a good number of really amazing family childcare homes that, with those smaller numbers, have some flexibility to take children out into a wonderful experiences in their beyond spaces, whether that be local community that's walkable or they're taking kids on daily field trips. And we've also found that a lot of our in-home providers, their outdoor spaces just tend to be more natural, a backyard compared to a traditional child care center outdoor space. So for our challenge, it's really been kind of twofold. The first has been how do we help people stay connected? And not only in the Omaha area, but really statewide. My role is I'm based out of Omaha. UNL is in Lincoln. So you can see Lincoln's kind of down there with a star on it, not too far from Omaha. Again, there's just the desire to do in-person things has really not come back that much post-COVID in our community. We are looking forward to having some in-person opportunities for our inside-outside members moving forward, but today we're going to talk about a lot of our online and asynchronous and synchronous community of learner work. A fascinating fact about Nebraska that I always think is so interesting is that the climate between Omaha, Nebraska, and Scottsbluff, which is way over on the western side of the state by Wyoming, it changes as much as the climate does from New York City to Omaha. So it's significant. It's a pretty big state, but it's about 2 to 3 times less geographical amount than that. But it's, as you move from the Missouri River up into the Sandhills and starting to get towards Wyoming, there's a pretty big elevation change. So it's also a challenge for our educators to think about what outdoor learning looks like for them in different climates. And then we also have a little bit of a challenge with time zones when it comes to doing things live online as well. So this year, what we decided to do for our inside outside meetings is really go into kind of this asynchronous, synchronous hybrid model. We kind of just called it the nature-based learning and early child professional development series. The need for this to become a series compared to kind of previously standalone classes actually came out of a grant we have with the LEAF initiative, which is an internal grant that was awarded to create this group. It stands for Learning Environments for All to Flourish. And the group is doing some really great research around children's cognitive and social emotional benefits from having naturalized outdoor learning environments. And one of the areas of need that we identified was professional development for that staff. So we kind of used this series with that was open to the general public as also kind of a pilot test for the PD for our LEAF initiative participants. Moving forward, the PD is actually going to end up staying with Extension. If any of you do professional development, know it's really important that we meet people where they are. And we'll talk a lot about that today, about keeping it kind of flexible and what that looks like. And it didn't align great with the research, kind of the research plan going on. There were so many elements of this research project that adding in a PD component that they were trying to research was just a little bit too big of a task to cover in a 5-year grant. So the PD is still going to be an option for all those sites, but it is going to kind of come back to Extension, which is will work out really great and make it way more accessible much sooner had it stayed under that grant. So anyway, just a little background. That's kind of why we decided to try out this methodology compared to just doing our meetings like we've done previously. And actually, I do think, oh yeah, so, okay, sorry. So like I said, these classes are open to the public. They are approved for in-service hours for kind of our child care licensed programs. So anyone with in-homes or family child care programs, child care centers, preschools, school-age programs here in the state of Nebraska, they are able to receive in-service hours for any amount of the classes that they did with us. We utilize the public version of Canvas to kind of house all of the asynchronous content. Each month, we'll get to the schedule here in just a minute, but we provided an hour long asynchronous class that had some kind of built-in quizzes, or more like, kind of prompts throughout just to kind of keep people engaged. There was a optional one additional 1 hour putting into practice assignment, which would be some way that we were taking the content they learned and asking them to try it out and then kind of report back to us. Like I said, they could earn up to an hour of credit for that. And then there was also a 1 hour live virtual community of learners each month that focused on the topic of the asynchronous class. So we're going to spend a lot of time digging into those different pieces and parts and how that went for everybody. So our 25-26 schedule, we started off in August with Introduction to Nature-Based Learning, which I'll just take some time now to kind of give just a really brief overview of each of like the content for that. So that one's pretty self-explanatory. It really helps educators, our early child educators learn what nature-based learning is. That class talks a lot about like where you are right now and where your goals are, and really recognizing that for a lot of our participants in these kinds of classes, their goal may or may not be to be fully outdoors. Their goal might be just to move towards a little bit more nature indoors, or they maybe want to get a little bit more time outdoors, or they want to think about ways to improve their outdoor setting to make it more comfortable so they can be outside for longer periods of time. The climate here in Nebraska can be quite cold in the winter, and quite hot in the summer. We have had, like a lot of parts of the country, have had some ongoing drought issues, but it is not uncommon, really across Nebraska, but especially here in the Omaha area where we are, to have several days in the 100-degree weather in the summer, lots of heat, not a lot of rain. So really helping programs think about how do we get children outside in all seasons. We have all four seasons here, sometimes all in one day. And how do we create environments that make that really feasible? Which gets us into our September topic, which is the idea of outdoor learning environments. So this topic really dug into, again, what type of play and activity settings are outdoors, the ideas of affordance, and just really helping us think about the spaces that we have for children. Um, we'll talk about lessons learned, but I will just mention right now, we really want to do some more intentional work next year on our next kind of go round about indoor settings too. The reality is a lot of these programs we work with do still spend a lot of their time indoors. So we do know we need to spend a little bit more time helping educators thinking about how to bring nature indoors than we might have done. We kind of did it throughout, but it wasn't quite as intentional as we need to be. October, we talked about risk, challenge, and safety in outdoor learning environments. A big thing that many of you are probably familiar with is just something as simple as a risk assessment, which is not frequently done in our state. So helping teachers understand how to do risk assessments, formalized and kind of those informal risk assessments on the spot. We talked a lot about licensing and helping people understand what the licensing rules do and don't allow you to do around outdoor play and learning. And again, really helping us move from kind of that mindset of like, how are they going to get hurt and what's going to go wrong to like what opportunities are there, and what are the educator and children's roles, the teacher and child role in making sure that we are really challenging ourselves and learning how to take appropriate risk, but also not kind of crossing the boundary into hazardous hazardous situations. November, we talked about intentional teaching in outdoor learning environments, really help teachers think a lot about their role in children's experiences, indoors, outdoors, and beyond. January, we talked about observation and documentation in the outdoors. We find one of the things that a lot of our programs really struggle with, at least in our community, is being able to really share what they're doing, being able to really watch children and see how they're engaging with nature, using that for curriculum planning, using that for engaging families. And a big piece, again, is using that to advocate for the importance of time outdoors. So that was kind of the focus of that January class. February was following the child, so supporting kind of inquiry-based exploration. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of the reordering of these ones later, but that one definitely was put here kind of by a committee of people that put these classes together as part of the grant process. The following the child is going to be moved up much earlier on in future iterations of this work. to really help us think about what inquiry-based exploration looks like, and really set the stage for future classes. So it was a great class. We really enjoyed it. Teachers enjoyed it, but a lot of the comments were like, that needs to be way, way sooner on. And then kind of our last official class in the series was the sustainability of outdoor learning environments, which is a big passion of mine. I'm working on my dissertation right now that is looking at sustainability of outdoor learning environments. And really, we're extending this to not just be outdoor learning environments, but really sustainability of nature in programs in any capacity. What works and what doesn't, is what that class is looking into. And we are learning more and more about that as we go. Um, One of the kind of challenges that we had this year is that because this was done in collaboration with the grant project, there were a couple professional development courses that we would have liked to have done but it was too much for the grant. So we would love to have done an entire class on loose parts, but it just didn't work out within the limitations of the grant timeline and funding. So loose parts was covered. We did kind of a shorter session on loose parts in April, and did just a short micro module on that. That was really well received by the community of learners. You'll also notice that there's nothing here about family engagement and community engagement, which is super, super important. That was not included as part of this schedule because, again, this was set up as a pilot for the grant work originally, and the grant actually had some outside folks come in and do some work around community development and family engagement. So we do know in other iterations that's going to be really crucial to include probably early on and then, of course, throughout the classes as well. And then our May meetings are actually happening later this week. And we are doing a recap and then really making sure that we include the voices of our teachers in the 26-27 planning. We will talk about that at the end of today as well, but it's all some of it's kind of mostly figured out and some of it's definitely tentative as we hear the voices of our participants and what they're looking for. Something really important to this work, of course, is that we have alignment with guidebooks. There are two, really thinking about what resources there are available within the field of early childhood nature-based learning and really leaning into those, not only to really help us make sure that we are addressing what our field knows are the great opportunities that nature provides for us and how to handle some of the challenges. But it also is important for us to use accessible guidebooks that the programs could also either purchase or download on their own, and be able to kind of make it part of their program's culture and integrate some of these different things into their policy like their teacher handbook and family handbooks and just center-wide policies that they might have. So the first one, which made total sense because we spent all of last year with this group discussion discussing the nature-based early childhood program assessment and guidebook. That was one of our guiding documents for this. So we really made sure that we connected each of our topics to elements of this guidebook and tried to make sure that for the most part, we covered the majority of the guidebook as it's applicable to child care centers and family child care programs through our classes. The second book that we focused on is NAAE's Nature-Based Preschool Professional Guidebook. And again, same thing, trying to make sure that we covered most aspects of that throughout the classes, and that especially those that pertain to kind of the unique situations of licensed childcare programs. There are more traditional setups compared to your more nature-based and, fully nature-based or forest type schools. So so just to kind of go again, looking at our core classes, as I talked about earlier, we do definitely have some plans to kind of change the order of these around a little bit, integrate family engagement and community engagement more into these as well. But we really found that these kind of topics did do a pretty good job of covering the bases. It is really important too that we stress, there's a lot of great professional development out there. all across the country and really all across the world that we've participated in Nebraska Extension here as participants as well. And we do find that one of the things kind of unique that we've seen in our classes when compared to others that we've taken is, again, really this focus of what this nature-based learning looks like within childcare settings. So it's really thinking about that unique setting. Um, so, and to kind of give you an idea of like who showed up, who came to our classes, this is just a quick overview of just some of the kind of participant data. So we had 40 active participants in our asynchronous class. We had about 65 people sign up, and some of them signed up and never kind of got going on it, which is pretty typical, we have found. So there were 40 participants in the asynchronous class that completed at least one, if not more, modules. And again, we had six full modules in there. And then during our community of learners sessions, we had 180 unique participants. About half of those people just showed up one time. 18% attended at least twice, and then 32% attended three or more of our sessions. So 61 people. We found we kind of had a core group of about 10 people coming to our evening session and about 15 people coming to our lunchtime session. And it was also really great. This is one of the things that's so wonderful about online learning opportunities. Of our community of learners groups, we had 25 or 24 of Nebraska's 92 counties represented, but we have a lot of counties in the state of Nebraska. So that of the 24 counties that we had, that those 24 counties represent about 77% of our state's population. So we had people from pretty much all of our more populated counties across the state, and then also some of the smaller ones as well. So I do want to take a step back too. I feel like I probably didn't talk as much as I wanted to about the actual structure of the class. So what folks were able to do is there is a cost to do Canvas, but we decided, oops, sorry, here we go. There is a cost to access Canvas, but we decided to cover that cost for participants this year as we were kind of trying things out, seeing how things worked. So we covered the cost of the asynchronous class. It was not a requirement to participate in the asynchronous class to be a part of the community of learners. So if you wanted access to that content, you did have to join the Canvas, you did have to sign up for the Canvas class. And then participants were able to just take the modules as they had time. The modules, like I said, were all about 1 hour. Some of them were they were all split up into 2 or 3 videos each. With a couple embedded questions, but they were able to kind of work through that on their own time. We really encourage participants to finish up that asynchronous class before our community of learners session, which many of the people that were actively engaged in the asynchronous classes did. But our community of learners really pulled a lot of people who never logged on to the asynchronous classes. They were just there for the conversation. And it was really important to us to make it as flexible as possible. The research really shows us that when working with especially adult learners in early childhood settings, that we really need to meet learners where they are. So we were trying to make this as flexible as possible and have as many options. Our 1 hour community of learners met on the second Tuesday and second Thursday of the month. Our Thursday group met at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which is when I do majority of my teaching these days. We have found a real sweet spot in that 1 to 2 p.m. timeframe for early childhood educators, where they're able to hop on an hour Zoom call when most of their children in their care are asleep, or they're able to get some coverage for lunch breaks and able to join in those conversations. We also had a group meet at 7:30 in the evening. We chose 7:30. We usually do things more like 6:30 or 7 start time, but we had some families that were planning to join us originally, so wanted to be able to get their little ones to sleep and then join. So that's another lesson learned. We're going to be moving that back to the 7 o'clock because, those are only an hour long, but getting people off of a phone call at 8:30 is a little bit late for a lot of our hardworking providers who've already been in the classroom all day. So we did offer those 2 times as a place to come together. And one of the really fun things is that some of our participants who came to one actually ended up coming to both sessions. So they would come to get even more conversation time. Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure I kind of revisited kind of the structure of that class a little bit more. Oh, looks like I did that one twice. Okay. So some of the demographics that also were interesting is that about 62% of our participants came from childcare centers or preschool. So that's kind of those traditional, care all day or half day private or half day preschool programs. About 29% of our participants came from family childcare homes, which is a pretty high percentage, which we were really happy about. Much of the care, especially in more rural Nebraska, is done by in-home providers. So we were happy to have a good turnout from them in this project as well. And of course, really helps us inform our practice moving forward about making sure our content can be relatable to people caring for children from infants through school agers in different spaces, but also all together in one space, like many of our in-home providers do. About 37% of our programs accepted subsidy that participated. Seven did not accept subsidy, and the rest of them, over half, were not sure, which is, again, not an uncommon thing. We have a lot of people that work in center-based programs and maybe aren't familiar with really what tuition and payment looks like for their families. So a lot of our participants weren't really sure if their program took Title 20 or not. We have a lot of programs in Nebraska that are eligible to take our Title 20 or subsidy funds, but oftentimes might not have children enrolled in that program at the time. 87% of our participants were white. That is not uncommon in our programming. So we are looking at ways to kind of make sure that we're making more people feel included and welcome to these classes. And 85% were non-Hispanic and 15% were Hispanic or Latino. We did have some really great opportunities come about just really organically, where we had in I think our evening sessions, we had a handful of our Hispanic Spanish speaking providers on at the same time. So we were able, in all of our breakout rooms, in most of our community of learner sessions, we were able to offer them a Spanish only session, or section. So one of the breakout rooms was was like a self-selected breakout room, and our Spanish speaking participants could go together. Speaking of our breakout rooms, you can see from our demographics that we were really thinking about what are the best ways to break people up into the rooms. We tried, there were a couple options. One of the things we did is sometimes we'd give a poll question, maybe thinking about where you currently are in your kind of practice of nature-based learning, and you'd kind of rate yourself, like, I do a little bit, I do a medium amount, or I do a lot. And then with Zoom functionalities, we're able actually to put people into breakout rooms based on their poll responses. So that was one of the ways we broke people up into rooms. That worked really well for a couple of the topics, but we found that in general, we had more luck breaking folks up just by what type of program they worked in. We really found that family child providers felt like they got a lot more out of it when they were with other family child providers. Same for our Hispanic Latino participants that might not have English as their first language. Got a lot more out of it when they could speak Spanish together in a room. So we are looking at ways to think about that moving forward, as well as, how do we set up those breakout rooms? We also had thought about in the breakout rooms doing like switching who they talk to each time. And we did that the first two sessions. We had them meet with different people. And the feedback we got, just kind of in the moment, was that we only have an hour of time to have a conversation. And, we do an intro and kind of some grounding experience to start off with. And then we send them into breakout rooms, the topics to talk about. We bring them back. Then we go ahead and share out. And then we would send them back into a breakout room again to kind of reflect on either another topic or to continue conversations. That if we didn't keep them with the same group, the same people within the same community of learners time, it was just taking too much time, just like reintroducing people and kind of getting like resettled in the space. So we did, once we got them in a room in the beginning, when they went to a second breakout room, they would stay with the same group and just discuss, a new topic or continue on for the previous topic. So those are, again, kind of lessons learned, figuring out the best way to connect people, but not make it too much. So we would estimate that within about an hour long meeting time, participants spent between 30 between 30 and 40 minutes in breakout rooms. And the rest of the time was little housekeeping, again, kind of grounding, helping people. If they didn't attend the asynchronous classes, we always did a short overview of what those asynchronous classes talked about, to either remind people that did attend about what kind of the topic was, or for those that didn't attend, that they had at least a little bit of knowledge, or content, I should say. They have tons of knowledge, but they had a little bit of content to be able to kind of guide their conversations. So our feedback from our community of learners were 80% of our participants were extremely likely to recommend community of learners format to others. And 99% were either extremely likely or likely. So that was a pretty high number, which was great. Our two most popular topics, ones that people really said they would tell a friend about, were our intentional teaching and sustainability topic. And again, our sustainability one wasn't really like global sustainability. It was really about what do we need to do to keep this going, right? You've got all these ideas and hopefully creating some naturalized outdoor environments and trying to incorporate nature in. What do we need to do to kind of keep that momentum going in our programs? Our observation and documentation one was like the least likely to be recommended. It still was quite high at 65%, extremely likely. And pretty much everyone was again in that likely to extremely likely. But this was important for us to note as well. We felt like this topic was a little confusing for participants. It's one that might be separated out. Observation might be kind of moved into more intentional teaching and following children's lead. And then documentation might become more of its kind of standalone class instead of kind of combining the two. It was rushed because it was a lot of content in an hour of time. And even the community of learners, the community of learners was kind of hard for this one because documentation, especially if you're not familiar with documentation, it's kind of hard to have a conversation with other people that did a lot of work in documentation. So yeah, again, just some lessons learned. Another question we ask is, are you going to use the information you used? 82% said they will definitely use. The data was kind of funny on this. It usually, the options are definitely, maybe, not sure, probably not, and definitely not. And it was 82 definitely is going to use. And then the other like 17% was like probably not going to use this, which is probably not too surprising because participants do get the hour of in-service credit. So we were really clear with people when they first got on the class that this was not a webinar format. Nebraska Extension, myself, I offer quite a few webinar format kind of classes during that 1 o'clock, especially lunch and learn time. So people are familiar with kind of coming on, typing in the chat box and engaging, but not having to like actually talk during a class, which can also be hard while you have babies and little ones sleeping in your space around you. So we were really clear that this is not like a hangout and listen to Katie talk for an hour. It is really a time to collaborate and connect with each other. So it was pretty common that we get on and we'd have maybe 50 people, 60 people on, the 1 o'clock time, and then we do our spiel and 5, 10, 15 people would leave the room after we told them they couldn't just hang out and get the credit for this class. But it also kind of made sense too that some people did still join us and still have great conversation, but they might not be that interested in nature-based learning. So might not use as much as what they learned. For our asynchronous classes, 70% said they would definitely use the information. And again, I think what you kind of see here is it was a free class. So moving forward, the asynchronous classes will not be free. They cost us to run those. And each person, we paid fees for them to participate. But some people signed up and never used it. Or some people signed up just because they needed some extra hours, especially towards the end of 2025 when they were trying to get their in-service hours. Over Christmas, we had kind of a bump in classes getting done, but some of those people we never saw in the community of learners. So guessing that they were just taking advantage of, in a good way, in a good way, I should say, like they're not taking, they're taking advantage of free PD right before the time was up for the year, and we're happy that we hope they were able to glean at least something from that opportunity. Some of the qualitative feedback highlights from the asynchronous classes were just lots of information kind of packed into those modules. We gave them ideas that were quick and ready to implement right away. Lots of ideas were supported with photos and videos. A lot of the content that they felt that they got in these classes is not offered elsewhere, at least not in our state, or some folks from other states had shared that the focus on childcare was really helpful to them. And then, of course, the convenience factor of those asynchronous classes being able to be done, work at your own time, whenever it works for you to take them, in whatever speed you wanted to move through them. Some of the qualitative feedback and general themes we found was that kind of the program offered small and big ideas to implement. So we really encouraged teachers to kind of make small changes, like what can you do tomorrow, but then what are some larger goals that you might have that you're working towards. And again, it's kind of the general theme of I gain the most when I'm in the breakout rooms. We're able to offer ideas and problem solve, and then the multiple dates and times to attend. And people really appreciate that flexibility. Some of our direct quotes that we had participants share was that I like that it's an hour and I can get it done during nap time, which I, as a mom of three young kiddos, also have really been loving offering options during lunchtime. I could offer, I'm already at work and this is what I do for my work. So it's nice to not have to do as much things in the evening. And we love that that's one of the beauties of online opportunities. I love this one. I feel like every class gives me a deeper understanding of and a sense of pride in my job as a child provider. The ideas and tips provided assist me in improving my program and make me better for my kids, and that's a great thing for all of us. So I just love that comment someone shared. And I'm always learning new ways to approach my teaching while simultaneously being validated with what I'm already doing. That comment, I think, is something I really, really love to hear from our providers is that we love giving them new ideas, but a lot of the people that we work with, a lot of people, these choices, these classes are optional. There are a lot of great offerings, both in person and online across the state of Nebraska, for really any area of early childhood someone might have interest in. So people that are coming to our classes in general, some are coming there for the free hours, but most of them are coming for the nature-based learning. There's actually, it wasn't for this, it was for the previous year. We did ask participants on a wrap-up survey, we had asked them, what brought you to our classes? And a lot of people came for the free hours, but ended up staying for the nature. And that's what we found this year as well, is that some people do just come for the free hours, but people that are coming back more than once, they're coming because the content is something that they care about. And we love it when people come and they learn, but they're also validated and they understand that what they're doing really matters and that they're doing things in a great way already. Which of course that community of learners just really drives that home even more when they're able to share an idea and somebody else is excited about it. It's always a good reminder for me because sometimes some of the ideas that are shared are not things that I would think to recommend. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're just maybe from a little bit of a different perspective, a little bit of a different approach to learning that I usually ascribe to. And it doesn't mean that one is right or wrong or better, but there's ideas, we're only as strong as we're just so strong when we're all come together. And maybe in the future, I'll ask people how many years they've been teaching, because I bet we have 1,000 years of experience on some of these phone calls, just with so many people engaged and with so many years of experience. And then this last one too is really like the core reason for doing community of learners is that they're having that like-minded community to bounce ideas and hear strategies that are working in other centers. And we're just so pleased to see that feedback as well, and just makes us know that this is something we really need to continue in future years. So speaking of thinking of future years, kind of our lessons learned. So the first one is around rethinking participation in asynchronous learning. And we were hoping that we were meeting participants where they are, but we are going to try to do that even more moving forward. Right now our asynchronous options were all like 1 hour credit options and everything gets credit. I always am trying to make sure I give people like the in-service hours that they've earned. But we'll talk about, that a little bit as well. It just, you don't always have to get credit for every single thing we do. And I'm not gonna give credit for like 15, 10-minute activity or something someone does. So really thinking about where they are and what their needs are. Not everyone comes to us because they need a bunch of hours either. So thinking about again where they are and what they want to do. Balancing the depth and accessibility of that online PD. So being able to go on, it's kind of funny. I actually don't like asynchronous classes at all to be the learner. I enjoy putting them together. I enjoy engaging with people on discussion boards, which we didn't have much traction on this, which is I didn't even include those in because there wasn't much discussion board conversation happening with this group. But I love to, be able to present a topic and then have time to actually talk about it in community of learners. But that hour-long model doesn't work for everyone. And then also even just accessibility, we can't offer these things for no cost forever. Like every other organization and university in the country, we are experiencing some pretty substantial budget cuts, with even more budget cuts being forecast for future years here in Nebraska. So we can't always do everything for no cost. So what are options that we can do for no cost, and what are options that might have to have a cost involved? And kind of what does that look like? Depth of practice and accessibility. And like I said, not everyone needs the full module. Some people already know a lot about that topic and might be able to just kind of watch, a little bit of it and be able to have a great conversation with just a 5-minute teaser. And then other people just, again, maybe might not have that interest in spending that time on the asynchronous modules, but still want to learn a little bit of that content. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but the actual class content itself, we're really thinking about some of the key ideas need to be introduced earlier and revisited more frequently. The classes that we used were developed as kind of standalone classes originally, and since it was a pilot, we were kind of trying things out, trying out the order, trying out kind of the whole plan. So there are definitely some changes we're doing. We're going to bring some content pieces in earlier, move some things around, add some things in. We're not really removing anything at first per se, but just thinking about repackaging some of those things. And again, we're also thinking about trying to spread out some of the nature-based learning content into other classes. The nature-based learning class, Intro to Nature-Based Learning, is a great class, and I think it's important for people to kind of get that foundation right from the beginning. But we got into a little bit more detail in that I think if you're brand new to the world of nature-based learning, we probably could talk about some of those concepts later on, later on as well, so we're not too overwhelmed. So multiple pathways into reflective practice. So I briefly talked about the putting in practice activities. We only had a handful of people complete those, and some people, we gave a pretty clear guidelines as far as what was expected with those putting into practice activities because we were awarding an hour of credit for that. So we wanted to make sure that they had a word count if it was a reflection activity, that they really showed a clear connection between the content and how they implement it in their programs. And, we had a few people do them, but it was a lot of work for us to go in and grade those and comment, and not quite a few, but some of them we had to kind of send back and say, you were off to a great start, but doesn't seem like you really deserve quite an hour of credit for that response. And most people would just not respond back after that, which is fine. But really thinking about what is reflective practice, how can we, when we're doing asynchronous learning, help people make sure that they're integrating this into their practice. So we realized too that the community of learners itself is really that reflective pedagogical space. So having, some type of additional thing to do, maybe isn't necessary for many of our participants. The other part too is that the educator interest, completely depends on their capacity and their need. So we had some participants that said that, I really want to do that. I need the hours and that's why I did it. But they didn't really have the capacity to do the assignments to their full requirements. So thinking about what that might look like. And yeah, we'll talk about that. Sorry, I keep saying we'll talk about that later, but I'm trying to not get too down my rabbit holes. So making sure I make a note to cover that towards the end here. We're almost done. Ooh, okay. So, kind of our lesson learned, our summary of kind of our lessons learned is that we are actually going to be expanding the in-depth in asynchronous learning for participants seeking that deeper study. And we're going to roll that out as a certificate we're going to talk about in a few minutes. We're going to develop shorter context modules, primarily through the use of short videos and even kind of like a reel type of format. That will kind of create those multiple entry points into community of learner participation. So the plan, yeah, is that just trying out something a little bit shorter, videos, kind of quick, sweet, to the point. We're also going to really recognize that informal reflection is really important and can be just as valuable as professional learning, but might not always need to have a certificate attached. So by that, I mean, we are going to continue to be intentional about reflection prompts that we might provide throughout an asynchronous course or at the end of a community of learners, encouraging further reflection and further activity, putting things into practice, but not always having to give everyone credit for every single thing they do related to the professional development opportunity. And then we're really thinking as well about this, considering flexible credentialing or tiered participation options, which we'll get into in just a few minutes. So for 2026, 2027, our inside outside meetings, we're going to run these August through April. We're backing off one of the things I don't know why I never thought of this before in all my years, but we offer these on the second Tuesday and second Thursday of the month, but sometimes Thursday, right, the second Thursday is before the second Tuesday, and it was confusing for people because the meetings would be on two different weeks. So we're gonna switch these to the third Tuesday and then the following Thursday of the month, which seems like kind of maybe a silly detail, but it was definitely confusing for people and for myself included, to be like, oh my gosh, I kept feeling like I was forgetting something or messing up something on the calendar. So we're gonna run those August through April. We do have meetings in May, but May is so hard. We actually canceled our evening meeting this week because we didn't have enough people coming. And when those community of learners, it's hard to run them without enough participants there. So we are not going to do May. May is such a busy month for everyone. So, but we'll run these August through April. They're going to focus on that community of learning format again. So I'll do my little, I don't know the right word for it, but my little spiel at the beginning that we're so happy you're here. You're welcome, but you need to be engaging. We did actually kind of track engagement. So when you're on Zoom, when you've got breakout rooms open, you can see who's got their camera on and their microphone on. And we did invite people, especially at the 1 o'clock hour, if they weren't able to talk, if they had baby on their lap sleeping or something, that they could type in the chat box. But we had myself and then another kind of Zoom assistant that we would pop in the rooms and make sure that people were chatting. And if there was someone that wasn't participating, I would usually get an email from somebody saying, hey, I was in this breakout room and so and so wasn't participating. But we did find that there wasn't really anybody throughout the process that we had to go back and not award certificates to. Everyone participated in the extent that they were able and fully enough for us to still feel comfortable awarding them their in-service hours. Um, another big part of that we're looking forward to for next year is that our content piece. So remember, 2 years ago, we used the professional practice or the guidebook and assessment from Minnesota. So we used that one in 24, 25. 25, 26, we did our asynchronous content. 26, 27, we're going to try these really short videos. We're going to try to push them out on social media. We're probably going to try to just put them on as like a link that the participants will get a week or 2 weeks, probably just a week before the classes. We're going to so there'll be ones about loose parts, how to set up a mud kitchen. Something about like we'll do one of I've got a great video of my kiddo climbing trees. So we'll watch the video and then I'll just talk through my like in the moment risk assessment that I did and what that looks like. So we'll just have really a series of short videos that they can watch beforehand. It shouldn't take them more than maybe 10, 15 minutes to watch the videos to feel like they're ready to come to class and chat. And we're really hoping that maybe towards the second part of the school year, that maybe some participants will submit videos or photos or kind of share their stories as the prompts for conversation as well. So fingers crossed that works. I will say too, I've got my contact information at the end of this. I think it's also available on the conference website probably. But our inside outside meetings, we are the Nebraska Iowa chapter, but these are open to everyone. They will be again the third Tuesday of the month at 1 o'clock Central Time, and the third and whatever the following Thursday is, or no, sorry, Tuesdays are at 7:30 or at 7 o'clock. It'll be evening on Tuesdays, and then Thursdays at 1 o'clock lunchtime. Lunchtime one. So we're excited to offer those again and really thinking about what that looks like. We're also trying to figure out approval for other states as well, if other people come from other states so that they can earn in-service hours as well. And then finally, we're really excited to be relaunching our asynchronous online program. I actually did do a pilot of kind of a nature-based learning certificate program about 4 years ago that went really, really well. It was a combination of our extension programs as well as some programs from Early Childhood Health Outdoors with the National Wildlife Federation that were some free online classes as well that people could take to kind of meet the requirements. It included a capstone project and then some reflective prompts as well. So we're going to be kind of combining lessons learned from the nature-based learning certificate program we've done previously, as well as this last iteration this year. And we are going to be creating this, the name is probably finalized, but not 100%, but this nature-based learning in early care and education settings. What is unique about our project, again, I shared earlier compared to others, is that this one is really focused on meeting people where they are in more traditional childcare type programs, but of course open to anybody. But understanding that while we all wish we could be out in the woods all day long or outside, in these really amazing, just nature immersed programs, that's not the reality for a lot of our early childhood programs. So really creating a opportunity for those that do want to dig in deeper to have a space that's really kind of tailored for them and where they are. We're looking at probably doing 2 tracks. One of the tracks will be a PD only, so just taking those asynchronous classes, and then the other track will be the certificate track. We're looking at adding in a community learning option in addition to our inside-outside one, so we're not quite sure what that'll look like yet. But this isn't launching until winter 2027. So we've got a little bit of time to think about what that looks like. Our plan is probably that we will actually just ask our participants, what do you need? Do you want to just join the community of learners from inside outside for the first part of the year? See if that's a good fit. Maybe we could put our online program participants in a breakout room together, but during that same time, which also doesn't require as much time commitment on myself and my other people that help me out with that work to add another night training into things. So we're kind of looking at what those options might be for that group. We really are trying to find multiple ways to connect and reflect. So by doing kind of an online certificate program, you might really want to do reflective prompts. You might want to just thinking about all the different ways that people can connect with each other, opportunities maybe for bringing discussion boards into the mix, which we didn't do intentionally this past time. Is there a place for discussion boards or some type of social media, Facebook interaction page? How are we reflecting on our practice? Are we doing, not everyone likes to write. So are there opportunities instead of doing written reflections to do a photo reflection or a video reflection? So we think about what that looks like. In our previous certificate program, we had the requirement of 10 reflections. And they could be any reflection on any specific topic or just any specific class or just 10 reflections throughout the process. So we're thinking about kind of leaning into that more this next time around as well. One thing I'm really excited about as well is we are looking into figuring out what mentoring and coaching opportunities there might be. That might be receiving coaching from Nebraska Extension, from myself and some other colleagues that I have, and then also mentoring, providing both mentor and mentee opportunities. So we've got a lot of great educators here in Nebraska that have a lot to share. Unfortunately, there's no funds connected to any of this right now. I love to pay people for their time and energy and efforts and knowledge, but we're looking at least to start off with some volunteer mentoring opportunities that will roll out with this program as well. So yeah, we'll see what that looks like and some ongoing coaching opportunities. Another area of huge need that we see is kind of the visioning support and technical assistance for outdoor learning environments. That's work I do in another kind of part of my job as well, is helping create visions and support for enhancing outdoor learning environments. We're going to kind of roll some of that. It'll stay a standalone, but we're going to roll some of that work into the certificate program as an option as well. Like I said, there'll be kind of two main tracks, but we got to meet people where they are. And some people already have a great outdoor environment, and some people can't change their outdoor environments. So we want to just make sure we provide a nice menu of options for people. Um, we are looking into in-service approval in additional states. Most of our things are already approved in Iowa. Some of our things are approved in Kansas and South Dakota. So we're going to be looking at what other states we can have this easily approved in. And then as participants kind of roll in, we will try to expand the offering of those approved in-service hours. And then finally, we're looking into pricing models. Like I said, times are kind of tough right now in academia and nonprofits and everything. So thinking about, we have to pay for these access to these online services. So what kind of pricing, what pricing model is going to work for our participants? We know that, getting a certificate in this is probably not going to increase anybody's salary, unfortunately, in early childhood. So it really is just because they're dedicated. So we're looking at both individual pricing models as well as maybe a pricing model for if the whole program participates in our work as well. There might be some discounts available. So I think that's all I have for you today. I'm so happy to have been able to share all about our this year's iteration of our Inside Outside meetings using our nature-based asynchronous and community of learners program. I really hope that I'm able to connect with you in person in San Antonio if you're coming, or virtually as well. My email is here on the screen. I would love to get any feedback you might have on this session, ideas, some needs that you might see in your own communities, and then definitely have you join us for either our Inside Outside meetings starting in August, or join us for that online certificate program when that launches this winter. Thanks so much and have a great day.